Warning, warning, warning.
Okay, brothers and sisters and misses and misters, here's your daddy-o with the sounds to go. No shucking, no jive, and I'm telling you, your music's arriving.
Hey everybody, I'm Largo, this is Lair, and I have a special treat. I had a chance to hook up with my buddy Johnny, and he is available to chat for a while. So I thought we'd just do a little bit of pre-recording and hang out and talk, because he's on the other side of the world, and I don't always get a chance to hang with him. So here he is, Mr. Sorensen, Johnny. The
Hey, Largo.
hey, the Bat fan on Batman. One of
Yeah,
the
from,
most
from all the
interesting
way
blogs.
down, from all
Yeah,
the way down under.
very cool. Is that a dingo?
Dingo at your baby.
Yeah, what are we like, 14-hour difference or more? You're in Perth, right?
It's
Around
it's
Perth?
5:30 p.m. here, so it's usually 12 around 12 hours. But if you guys go daylight savings, then it's 14 because we don't have it in this state, but the other states have it.
Right. I'm fortunate in where I live here in Guatemala, we do not do daylight savings.
Oh, so it
Unfortunately,
should be the same then,
yeah, it just kind of goofs
just
me up
everyone else.
for, yeah, everyone else. When I'm talking to folks in the States, I'm like, okay, are they an hour ahead or 2 hours behind or carry the one? I was like, it's too much
Just
math.
all
I'm not gonna
those all
do it.
those uppity mainlanders and their special times.
No, it's like, look, unless you're out, you need the daylight because you're gathering crops. Do we really need
Hmm.
daylight savings anymore?
No, it's in every year. It's in like the news media, like just get rid of it. No one cares.
Right. It's like we live in an all electric world now, and so I don't know that it's necessary, but it's a
No.
holdover. So one of these days. But as I was saying, your bat blog is groovy, man. I really
Yeah,
dig
it's
the articles there and a lot of research. What got you into that? Just
um, I just lifelong reading comics, I guess.
yeah.
Actually, I can tell you, I can remember the exact moment I thought of doing like a written blog. It was back. I live in Perth, but I used to live in Victoria, other side of the country. And one night I was sitting there, and like I already read like comics. I read books about comics, like non-fiction, comics history, and they're great. And even when I was like a kid, I used to go to the public library and be like, tell me anything about history, Marvel comics and DC and national periodicals, whatever. And there's loads of good non-fiction books on like Amazon Book Depository. But when you go on the internet, it's just all like, here's the top five bunch of bullshit things about this, and here's the
Right.
actor in this movie. And I'm like, I want something with a bit more depth to it. There's got other than just straight comics history and just straight here's the newest movie or TV show. What else can I read about? And I couldn't find it, and I went, fuck it, I'm going to start writing something.
Yeah. So it's like it's one of my favorite things that Michael French says is, the fans are doing the best work, and that's
Hmm.
true in the blogs as well as the toys. There's a truth to that. If you have a passion and you're a fan of
Yeah,
something, you're going to find a way. And
and
are you
there
more
is
into the
good blogs out there.
writers?
Yeah,
Oh, that's true. I mean, there's stuff. When I started doing some research for the pulp fiction
mhm.
spotlights I've been doing with Bill on Weird
Yeah,
Fantastic,
love those.
man, there's some great blogs out there about the Phantom, Doc Savage, some of the classic
Yeah.
shows. So there's passionate fans out there that put some good work into it, and your blog is very similar in that respect. So, are you more into the writers of comics or the artists, or a
Oh,
little of both?
It's a real mix because I used to look up. I mean, before YouTube and video stuff got big, I was always looking up written content, whether it's a print book or online. And I'm 43 this year. Some of the better blogs are guys who are in the 50s and 60s that really grew up with this. They were kids and grew up with the old DC and whatever. And
Yeah.
but then the new media comes along and it's video, and the younger generations doing fantastic stuff. There's guys in their 20s making amazing videos about Batman stuff and on YouTube, but there's a real gap in the middle. So I'm in there. Like there's the older guys, the younger guys. I never learnt video production or anything, so I just went, what do I know? I can sit and write some nonsense, and hopefully someone in the world might read it. Probably not, but 10 years later, I'm still writing it.
Hey, it's a labor of love. I have read some of your blog, and I find it very interesting. I definitely
I
like some
feel
of your
guilty.
takes. Oh, you do?
Oh, I never get enough done, and I try and I made a decision at the start to do a mix of like sort of comic history type ones, but also kind of ones that are a bit more personal, um, like how does Batman influence you in your life or or anyone's life? And it's like, well, he's physically fit, he's got good morals and values. He's rich, obviously. I'm not rich, but I don't. That's not really a characteristic. That's kind of the background thing. But he's a
Right.
good human being. But he's like like the Shadow and all the old time pulp guys. He's like dressed like a supervillain or a bad guy to scare people. But there's lots of elements of him, especially his morality, that I really love digging into. And sometimes they touch on it, like in the Nolan films, but there's always a lot of other stuff going on. I like to focus even more on the psychology and the moral values of the character, as well as the history and legacy of the character as well.
True. One thing I really like with Batman in general is the idea that he is at the peak of human ability, whether it's
Yeah,
mental or physical. And I think that's kind of a holdover from Doc Savage in his
yeah, for
DNA.
sure, for sure. He's
And
like an Olympic level athlete, but I mean, even professional athletes are good at like the footy, or they're good at the javelin, or maybe two things. Maybe they're good at martial arts and a javelin. No one's good at 10 million things. Like that's nonsense.
right, yeah, some of the writers take some great liberties. You know, it's almost
Yeah,
like with the ubiquitous utility belt. It's like you can
yeah,
only
yeah,
put so much stuff in your belt, man. You can't have
yeah.
everything.
Or it used
But
to be like in your Neil Adams, Neil era. He would be like a gymnast. Not he
yeah,
wasn't super buff like this. It's only in the 90s they started getting more influence of actual bodybuilding references as art for those crazy pecs and deltoids. And he went from being a guy who would lift maybe, a few hundred kilos or something like, deadlift, bench press, to all of a sudden he's got like, he could, the actual on record DC Wiki nonsense is as much as the world's strongest man. And those guys are the size of 3 fridges and they eat all day like 5 people. He can't do that and run around and
right.
punch people and still be athletic. It's nonsense.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree. One of my favorite eras is the Neil Adams era because
Yeah,
the look of the character, he's more, as you say, he's more athletic, he's more acrobatic.
he's
He's not
diving through
super,
windows.
yeah, and there was more of the adventurer to him. I mean, he had
Yeah, yeah,
international stories where he would chase a case down, to Cairo or
yeah. I love
Timbuktu.
that James Bond element in those stories.
Yeah, and his gadgetry was a little bit more toned down. I mean, he did have
Hmm.
some outlandish stuff here and there, but it seemed
Yeah.
like with Neil Adams, it's like, okay, what would work? What would he actually put in his utility belt? What would he
Hmm.
have in the Batmobile that he would need on a daily basis or for a specific mission? He knows he's going after XYZ, he's going to carry something that fits.
It did feel more like the old timey science hero, detective hero characters in this era. He didn't overemphasize the super element. He emphasized more the practical elements. Yeah.
Right. And some of the team ups I really enjoyed, like I want to say Brave and was it? I think it was Brave
Brave and
and
the Bold.
Bold in that
Yeah, I
era
just I
where
just got a big omnibus of the '80s ones the other day. It was all
Mhm.
like mostly Jim Aparo ones, and it's got about 20 or 30 issues. Big phone book one I got on sale.
Those are awesome because
Yeah, I
again,
love those.
similar with Adams, that Adams kind of directed the style in that era, and everybody would kind of follow suit. So when he
Yeah, like it became the house style. Like the Jim
yeah,
Aparo was the next main guy who did loads, but he was told to do it in the Neil Adams style, which he did, and he's a good artist himself.
and even the story tone was similar in the fact that
Yeah,
he is
yeah,
the detective first, he's a
yes,
superhero second,
yeah.
and
Right up until the mid '80s, really, until a certain Frank Miller came along. It wasn't stayed in that style.
yeah, I mean, I love Miller's Year One for its
Yeah,
dark
I
and
like
gritty
yeah,
and down to the brass tacks of what makes the hero work.
mm,
Some of the Dark Knight Returns and things that came
yeah,
out later, it, it, in my opinion,
yeah,
people took that and ran with it, and it was like, look, this is an Elseworld story. This is not supposed to
yeah.
be the way Hollywood
No,
is, and
no.
everything just started getting so dark, and it was like,
Yeah, that was that whole era, like mid '80s to the '90s. It was like who did genre dividing work. It was like Alan Moore and Frank Miller, but then all these like Me Too people came along with, oh, we're going to do it too, but they did it poorly.
exactly, they were poor copies. I mean,
Yeah.
Miller did some great story work
Mm.
and had some good ideas for the character, and even in The Dark Knight, you see elements of what he was coming from with Year One. He's like, you
Yeah.
know, it's the same guy. It's just we're starting at the beginning of his career. Let's look at him at the end of his career,
Mm.
and also a lot of the, I wouldn't say parody, but he definitely lampoons a lot of things that were going on in politics at the
Oh,
time.
for sure. Like, it's so like I mean, if you watch films like Dirty Harry in the '70s, and that's
Yeah,
very stylized. It's almost it's not grindhouse, but it's starts in reality but gets away from it with the whole Zodiac killer real life background stuff. And then you can
right.
see that coming into Batman in the '80s. It gets harder and meaner, he's growling, that sort of thing's coming into it.
Oh yeah, and a lot of angst and drama in the
Yeah.
romance too. I mean, whether it was
He's
Silver
not
St.
Judge Dredd.
Cloud or right, yeah, he's not, he shouldn't be that grim.
Yeah.
He even smiled and cracked a smile and joked with Robin back in the day. It's
Mm.
like I enjoyed especially seeing the stories where you're watching Dick Grayson grow up. He's not just the sidekick, human target kid
Mm.
anymore. He's a college student. He's doing his own thing. He's with the
Yeah, he's got his big
Titans.
collar.
Yeah. Well, before the Nightwing,
Oh, before that,
circus
yeah.
acrobat look, but he's
Mm.
still wearing the Robin suit, and it was like he would occasionally be Robin, but most of the time he's at college. He's working on his
Mm.
studies. He would occasionally do adventures, and then Ra's al Ghul shows up,
Yeah.
and all hell breaks loose. And here's Bruce going, yeah, somebody just kidnapped your buddy, and they know your secret identity. Oh, and it's all just a test to see if you're really worthy. And it's like, whoa, mind blown.
Yeah, he's a
Just
great character.
yeah, and a well done villain in the fact that the best villains are the hero in their own story. He's trying to
Mm.
save the world in his own way, and it's like, okay, your way is really twisted, and a lot of people are going to die,
Yep. But
but you got a plan. Okay,
he's
kudos
got a
for
point.
that. Yeah. So I really enjoyed the introduction of Ra's al Ghul, Talia, the League, and
Yeah,
all
I
that whole genre of the adventures, and then here's Batman taken out of his element and doing some kung fu fighting and ended up in some really weird and interesting places.
mm. Yeah, I've been waiting to do an article for a while about Ra's al Ghul, and I wanted to do one in the first year or two I was writing stuff, and now it's been this many years. Now it's like, well, I might as well do several, cover the original version, then cover the other versions I've done over the years. They've killed and resurrected them that many times since, and some stories that were mediocre, like
Right.
those '70s ones are still the best, or and as appearances in the animated series and Justice League, and that were good.
Yeah, and it's like anything else. You have a great character, and then whoever the writer is who takes over, it's like you
Mm-hmm.
can either fumble the ball or you can go, you can go big and do something awesome. And just some of the stories were misuses of the characters. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them were
Yeah.
brilliant. A great one that I think of is Tower of Babel, which was
Mm-hmm.
Grant Morrison,
Yeah,
JLA.
it was Grant Morrison and Howard Porter, I think, in that rerun
Yeah,
JLA in the '90s.
wasn't everybody's favorite lineup for JLA, but that storyline where
Mhm.
you see Ra's al Ghul as, again, it's like the League is, the Justice League is an impediment to his goal. So how does he deal with them? Well, he deals with them the same
Mhm.
way Batman would. Literally, he takes Batman's plans and turns them
Mhm.
against the
Yeah,
League. Such a great
yeah.
story.
I reread all those stories last year, and I back in the '90s, I mean, I've always read Marvel stuff for a long time, so I like Spider Man and all that, and but
Sure.
I collected Spider Man comics for probably a good decade. And Batman, I kind of picked up the odd graphic novel or the Elseworlds, the more prestige format stuff that was like you could read in one hit and be done and not follow a million monthlies. But
Right.
so when they brought out that Grant Morrison and Howard Porter JLA in the late '90s, I was like, oh great, it's got all these DC guys in one book. I don't have to buy 10 books. I can get a hit of these characters I like. So that was the
Yeah.
first DC one I collected ongoing, about the first 20 or 30 issues of that.
Yeah, as a kid, you get the odd comic book here and there that's out of continuity,
Mm.
from, parents pick one up or you're at the grocery
I read
store.
Batman and Adam Strange at the dollar shop.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd always have just random comics that, you'd read part of a story and then you'd never know what happened because, you
Yeah,
didn't pick up whatever.
I never cared. I do that with TV shows. I watch a
Yeah,
season out of order, and I watch the one next year or never. I don't care because my mind just puts it all back together eventually.
right. I definitely prefer the one shots and episodic stories.
Yeah,
We were talking
I've still
earlier
got
about, oh, go ahead.
I've still got a stack of like one shot Batmans as well as odd trades here. I've never kept that. I've read like I don't know, like tens of thousands of bloody comics, but I always cull it down, and I only keep just a handful of my favorite things to reread. Other stuff I can just read it digital, or I can just read it and not keep it. Get rid of it again.
Yeah, I pretty much when I decided to make the big move to Guatemala, I got rid of all of my comic books, got rid of my toys,
Yeah, I gave them
and
back
then
to the
ended up
comic shop
starting
where I
again
bought them
over
from.
here. Oh yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, for free.
Nice.
10 years worth of comics. They gave
But
me a weird look when I did that.
yeah, I'm kind of the same way with comics. It's like I'll pick up trades or graphic novels if it's a story I really love and I know I'm going to reread. Otherwise, yeah,
Yeah,
I'll have it on digital, check it out.
yeah.
Honestly,
I
a
do the
lot of
same
the
thing with paperback books.
yeah, and a lot of the new stuff, I'm just not into it. Ever since the new 52, things just kind of went downhill,
Yeah,
and I lost
yeah.
interest.
I
With the
like
exception of Batman. Batman was one
Court
of
of
the.
Owls story they did, but there's
I
some
was
of the
going to
other
say
stuff after that was like, nah.
Snyder's work with Batman during the New 52 is about the only thing in New 52
Yeah,
that has any merit. At least his early
yeah.
stuff.
I enjoyed his run. I enjoyed the Grant Morrison. I read the full run of that. Um, but I don't often follow modern comics. I tend to read stuff from 5 years or 10 years ago, and eventually I catch up to newer things. But the
Right.
coolest Batman thing I read in the last year or so was Batman and Scooby Doo. Is
Huh, really?
Yeah, it was one of those digital comics, but they've done print trades of it. I just ordered one this morning on Amazon. I've read it before, and I thought I had it, but I didn't, so I ordered it again. But it's really good, and it's mostly kind of like in the style of some of the '50s and '60s comics and the Brave and the Bold kind of stuff. There's heaps of nods to continuity and characters. There's really cool art styles, and the stories are good. They're short and they're fun, and they're really good.
That sounds very similar to that recent animated piece they did, the Brave and the Bold, where
Yeah, yeah,
they
it's
kind of
like
went
that.
back to yeah,
It's a real like kind of the
like
celebration of
the
the different eras. There's
yeah,
one of the stories, the Scooby Gang goes back in time to meet the original Batman from the '40s with the purple gloves, and then in the
nice.
next one, they run into the Neil Adams era Batman because they're going forward in time.
So you're seeing the different eras there. Apologies, my dog is chasing something.
Yeah, he's just trying
So
to say hello. He's going, "Come on, say hello." It was
yeah,
Scooby.
well, it's like having more kids. They're a
Uh,
handful. So
yeah, our cat meows. He's in the shed sleeping, but he meows at the door and sits with me in the morning. The moment you let him out, he's like, "Meow, meow, meow, let me back in." I'm like, "Just let you out, you bastard."
exactly. With these, yeah, I've got one that it thinks that she is like the hunter, and whether it's cats, rats, whatever's around, she's looking for something, and so You gotta love him. And then I have Eduardo on the other side, so it's like it doesn't matter what kind of noise canceling I use or
Yeah,
whether the windows are closed or open. When he's crowing, you hear him. So after
yeah.
we're recording, it's just like he's just part of the show. He's just going to be there when he wants to be there.
Yeah, he's become very popular.
He is. He's kind of taken on as a meme.
Yeah.
So people seem to like him, and he's got
I on and on that Rolo charity stream the other day, I wore a stupid hat thing, and nobody realized what it was, but it was actually a rooster hat.
nice. Yeah, and I get weird things in my what do you call it? Like on Instagram when you're flipping through the
Yeah.
reels because of the mentions of roosters and the running. Now I'm getting all kinds of like rooster
Uh,
pictures and people are sending me stuff. I'm like, how did this end up in my feed? I don't get this, but apparently I'm into roosters now, so it's a thing.
yeah.
But I like that comic you sent me earlier about what if Bruce Wayne had chosen a chicken instead of a bat.
Yeah, that was from the Batman Scooby Doo mysteries.
Fun. I will
That
become
was just
the
a
chicken man.
gag. Most of the rest of the comic was just a kind of straight Scooby Doo stop trot. It's kind of a mix of like the Adam West Batman and the Scooby Doo 70s cartoons. That's the kind of style and the stories. It's really good.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I really enjoyed
Yeah.
those. As a kid, they did all kinds of team ups with the Scooby Gang,
Mm.
and my favorites were the ones when they team up with Batman and Robin because you got Casey Kasem doing Robin,
Yeah.
and you've got
Yeah.
it just
They,
fit.
I didn't even know they did Scooby Doo team ups with the wrestlers like John Cena and that. They're animated specials. I'm going to watch that this week because I never even heard of it.
Yeah, those came along a little bit later. I think those were like
Yeah.
early
I've
2000s. We started doing some
I
of
don't
that.
know. I don't know when they were. I was just looking up anything to do with Batman and Scooby Doo and who's been and what, and then I was like, "What WWE?" I'm like, "What's this?"
Yeah. Another good one was when they team up with Blue Falcon and Dynamite.
Yeah,
They
that's
did that
good.
a few times. They
They
actually
had
did
some
a.
nice
Oh, go ahead.
toys last year when they had that Scoob animated special that didn't go to the cinemas, but it had that toy line. There was some cool stuff in that.
Yeah, picked up a Muttley. I talked about that with
Mhm.
Brick something. That's one of my favorite.
Actually, yeah, I've got him over
Toys.
there in the corner. There he is. That
Yeah, they're
Muttley
not
is
very
good.
articulated, but they're fun.
Mm.
I've got the
Good,
Mystery Machine and
nice
Scooby and
look.
Shaggy. Yeah, they're fun.
And I bought one of
Um,
the other ones. I can't remember all the characters in that line, but a couple, they had them 2 packs, but some of them I bought for one character, and then I passed it on to someone else who wanted it in collector group.
yeah, that was kind of cheeky of them, where the way they packed them. It's like if you want
Mm.
Scoob and Shaggy, you got to buy two other characters,
Yeah,
and then you pretty
I
much
never
have to
got
buy
the
the whole
Dino
bunch.
Mutt because I couldn't get that here.
I can't remember who came with.
Oh,
I
they
think
had
he might
several
have.
packs that were duplicates
Right.
of. Yeah,
They had them all mixed up. I don't know in the UK if they had them packaged different or in Australia either. Seems like they did.
yeah.
The company
Oh,
that did
I
that.
don't know if the line made it here, but I just bought mine on Amazon and got them sent over. Like I can see. Oh yeah, I've got Blue Falcon standing next to the animated Batman and Superman on my shelf over there.
Yeah, unfortunately, they didn't have good articulation with those figures because they were just meant for
No, they're
kids.
made for little kids.
Yeah, but it would have been cool if they'd given us a really
Mm,
well articulated Dynamite and Blue Falcon. I would have
yeah,
been.
but I like the look of them. I love animated like cartoon style figure, even if it's just a PVC and doesn't move at all. If it's got a really nice deco and look to it, I want it.
So, did you like the Bruce Timm art style with the Batman animated series then?
uh, sorry, the '90s animated Batman
Hmm.
or the comic, because I couldn't quite hear.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the animated TV show that Bruce Timm did the art style.
Oh yeah, what's his rule? Was straights on one side, curves on the other side. That was his
Yeah,
rule in all the
very.
animation model. Um,
He had
yeah,
a
I, I
very
I
unique
love that show to
style.
death, man. I wanted to get that for years on like DVD or whatever, and it just wasn't around. And it finally put it on Blu-ray in America a few years back, but
Hmm.
can't play that here. Then they finally put it out on Australia, so I could get the complete set on one Blu-ray set, and I was so happy to get that because I haven't watched it all the way through since not
Right.
more,
'Cause
more than 10
you
years
guys
ago.
have a different format. Do you guys use like PAL or so you have to
Yeah,
have it.
power.
Yeah.
You can play foreign region DVDs, but you can't play foreign region Blu-rays on most machines. So I can play UK Blu-rays here, but a lot of animated stuff only ever comes out in America on disc, and so you've got to get on a torrent or digital streaming or whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how they do the regions with different films.
I hate
It's
it. It's stupid.
yeah, it's like just make one international standard because we have an international market
Well,
now. And people,
they head towards that as far as game consoles back around the year 2000 or so, when you had going from PS2, Dreamcast, you had Nintendo Game Boy was always region free, the original one,
right?
and a lot of the game consoles went that way, but then we went back again. And once TVs went from your old analog CRTs to digital. There was no reason to keep these stupid region locks, other than crummy business corporates trying to go, no, you can't buy your thing until we say so over here. But it's
Yeah,
stupid.
it's silly. Yeah, I've run into that sometimes when I'm looking for some good Japanese anime.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it just they never make a version in whatever format is for
Yeah.
North America.
No.
So even if you get something from over there, you've got to get a DVD or a Blu-ray player that is multi format, and that's a pain.
A lot of the shows I like, there's not even on disc. Like, I mean, if you want to get Tiger Mask from the 1970s, that Japanese wrestling anime, forget it. But you can find it online if you look.
Right. Yeah, because again, fans will find a way.
Yeah.
But,
Which I'm grateful they have.
Oh yeah. Getting back to the Batman stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things I really enjoyed with the Bruce Timm era of Batman the Animated Series was the Art Deco. I mean, it was
I love that.
very
Yeah,
stylized Gotham City.
Yeah, the Gothic, the film noir, the deco, and
yeah. So you had elements of like the early 1940s, 50s type era of very similar to Fleischer, Superman. But at the same time, they still had some modern conveniences. So it was kind of this weird mix, It's like they had computers.
It makes it timeless.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's big old. You've got those big old 50s computers and stuff, and then you've got the 30s, 40s gangster mobiles, but then you've got like other more kind of modern phones and things. I love the mix of it. So good, and the buildings and architecture.
Yeah. And when they went on to do the Superman adventures, they kind of I love the way they kind of a whole different palette for Metropolis. So it still has that timeless style, but it's like Gotham is one thing, Metropolis is another, but yet it still worked. It was still that Bruce Timm kind of animated style that is like at first it was a little jarring, because I was used to the stuff we saw in the '70s cartoons.
Yeah, like these Super Friends and that.
Yeah, but it kind of grew on me pretty quickly because the stories were so good and the voice.
I loved it. I loved it from day one for the stories and the art. And like, if I was to look at just the animation model by itself of the Bruce Timm and the other people on the show, I probably don't like it so much. But when it's in motion, it's beautiful.
Yeah, you kind of you don't focus on the weird anatomy and some of the stylized things because you're into the story. And while they did some great original stuff, they also did some nods to some great storylines from the comics from back in the day too.
Yeah, I like in that first season they just amalgamated a whole bunch of different classic stories from several decades into a few shows, and you went, oh, they're not fucking around. They're doing real stories here for all ages, not just for little tots for 5 minutes and toys. They're doing a real show.
Right, but it worked on both levels because kids could watch it and go, "Yay, Batman!" and then adults could watch it and go, "Hey, I remember reading that." Yeah, like
they didn't make it too. They didn't make it too dark and violent for kids, but they didn't make it too kiddie for adults. They found a middle ground.
Yeah, and there were some stories that really dealt with some dark matters. I mean, like Heart of Ice. I mean, Mr. Freeze had always been kind of a goofy, freezy character or whatever.
Yeah.
With Heart of Ice, he's suddenly a tragic character trying to save.
Yeah, that was the one. That Paul Dini story defined that character for the comics ever since from that show. And the video games too. Yeah, they used the same.
The Mr. Freeze style totally changed because of what they did there, and it gave us Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn came
Yeah.
from the animated series and then it's become, super popular to the point of
Yeah,
absurdity.
it's been so many decades now. I still think, oh, she's a new character. Like, no, she's been around, going on 30 years now. It's like, what?
Yeah, but it still feels new because,
Yeah,
Silver Age was where I lived. So
because well,
anything
you remember
after
a time
that,
when she didn't exist, and then she did, and it
exactly.
seems new.
Yeah. And she keeps getting reinterpreted. But
Mm.
I liked her with the original Motley, the red and black and being the sidekick. And then the idea of her striking out on her own, and then her hanging out with
Mhm.
Poison Ivy, that was
Yeah,
fun. And Bruce Timm
yeah,
explored that idea too in an abusive relationship.
yeah.
Mad Love
Explored
was
borders
really
that
good.
is good go art books too.
Yeah, fantastic stuff.
Yeah,
So, as much as I love the Silver Age, there has been some things that are, I would almost say, like love letters to those great stories. And I think
yeah.
Bruce Timm is in his work. I want to say McDuffie. I'm trying to remember
Hmm.
the guy who wrote with him. I cannot remember his name, but
Which what on the show?
on the show and in some of the comics that were Chuck Dixon, I think, worked with that as well. I'm trying to remember who
I,
some of the other.
I just remember you got like Alan Burnett, Bruce Timm, Paul Dini were like the main three, and then
Right.
and what's the lady's name? I always forget the lady's name. She was like one of the other major ones on that show, and dozens of other shows. And Andrea Romano, that's it.
That's
I
the
feel
one. Yeah.
I think she was like the actual showrunner, or probably it wouldn't exist without her. So,
Yeah, I think she was the one that directed the voice talent and
mm.
recruited the voices that needed to be used. So yeah, she kind of, kept things
I forget the
rolling.
details. Like I listened to a few good podcasts with the different folks that worked on it, but I forget names. I remember like there was the show and the thing and how it came together. But I forget details unless I look them up and read them again.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm more into the stories and the
Mm,
development, but then it's like,
yeah,
Bruce Timm gets stuck in my head because I really started, after seeing that, I went back and looked at, well, what else has he done? And started reading about how he got into
no,
comics.
I think it's brilliant. Like his art style, his mind, his creative style is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. And what he did with DC animation really was well done. And that whole era of DC animation was probably the best they put out. Things that
I
came
think
after that,
it's the best. And if you look at the '90s, it's the best DC stories, full stop, in any medium. Are those animated stories?
yeah, I agree. They were well done. And when he went on to do Justice League, doing that ensemble cast, same thing. He said, how do we make this cast work? Because we can't have 6 or 7 heroes
Yeah,
all at the same time. And he started doing little vignettes. It's like, okay, well, these two are going to go off on this mission, and these two are going to be over here. It just worked.
yeah,
It had to be a lot of
really
challenges.
well done. Like I mean, all the stuff they did with the Batman Beyond, Justice League, and Unlimited. I mean, it builds on the back of decades of other great stories to pinch from, just like how the filmmakers pinch the best stories. But you
Yeah,
still got to be a good writer to simplify or synergize down a bunch of stuff and have it be coherent and good quality, and that people who have never read a comic in their life can watch those shows and enjoy them.
that's true. And another one, Batman Beyond, was such
Mm.
a surprise. It's like, okay, you're going to do a future Bat, but it's not Bruce Wayne. Why do I
Yeah,
care? And then I watched it, and I'm like, holy shit, this is good.
I
The
did a
writing was
Spider-Man
good.
one like that too that I was just rewatching this week.
Oh, the was it Spider-Man Unlimited?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
where they kind of did a
He's
future
on an
story?
alternate Earth, and it's meant to be. It's kind of. It's not technically the future, but the whole style of it, you can tell, is influenced by that um, era of the late '90s. Here, Batman Beyond, Transformers went from Beast Wars to Beast Machines. There was a lot of just kind of you wouldn't call it avant-garde, but there was a lot of kind of like risk-taking, weird kind of Euro science fiction influence coming in for those shows.
Yeah, they were taking risks. So you
Yeah.
had writers who were saying, okay, how do we take this character and put a spin on it, and not just to be novel, but to do something and tell a different story. Some were really good, some were
Mhm.
clunkers, but Batman Beyond was one of the best.
I
Um,
was surprised how good it turned out. I listened to a podcast that came out sometime in the last couple of years, but I listened to it recently. Um, the network was based on the success of the Power Rangers, was going to make Batman Beyond a Power Rangers like show with weird colors and stupid
oh,
toys. and the creators fought them all the way, and we're like, no way in hell, we're not doing that. And they pushed all the way, and thankfully they did, or it would have been a complete dumpster fire. But instead, we got another great show.
Oh yeah, I could just imagine, multicolored
Mm-hmm.
Batman and giant robots and stuff. We did see some tongue-in-cheek stuff with that in the comics. They did like with the Batman and Superman run. The modern world's finest where they had the two together. They did a.
I like those books. I read all that the 90s through 2000, 2010, all the like Jeff Loeb, Ed Beginnis, Superman Batman ones. They were great fun because they were all doing like the 50s crazy stories again.
Yeah, and I love this one story that they actually turned into one of the animated stories they did, where they had the Japanese it was Japanese version of the Toy Man, and he was working with them, and basically Batman had paid him to create some sort of a deterrent to
the big robot that's split in half down the middle.
Like, oh my god, I can't believe they did, and it worked. It was so funny. It worked in the comic. It worked in the film adaptation too.
I didn't get it so much then, but now in recent years, I've been watching a lot of classic robot and mecha and super robot anime. So I'm watching Gundam, I'm watching Voltron, I'm watching Combat Levi. So I'm seeing all the super robot tropes and the mecha stuff, and now I get what they're going for.
Yeah, my favorite of that era, I guess, was the Gatchaman. Where you have the science.
I still haven't watched any of that.
Oh, those are fun because you have the science ninja team.
I'll get there.
Yeah, they've all got their own cool.
So many shows.
They've got their cool gadgets, they've got their cool vehicles, and they're always fighting these giant mechanical monsters that are sent by this alien force. So it's Monster of the Week, but it was just a fun show. The G-Force or Battle of the Planet version that they made for North America was kind of watered down, and then I learned about
like with Voltron on that.
Exactly. Yeah. The what was it? Go Lion. I can't remember the Japanese title.
Yeah, it's just a Beast King Go Lion. I just finished watching it all the way through earlier this year. It's so super violent, man. It's like, oh my god.
Totally different story.
It's gory. It's super violent.
Yeah, and again, I don't think these were intended for kids because anime and manga. Yeah,
different relationship to the culture in Japan with their arts, their manga, their comics, their animation. It's for everybody. I mean, it is and it isn't, but they don't have all the weird taboos like the Bible Belt America is like, we can't have boobs on TV or things. But you go on the train in Japan, people are reading highly pornographic comics. Nobody cares.
Right.
They're not going, oh, I'm offended. They don't care.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. I've heard comedians joke about this. It's like, okay, nudity is natural. It's part of the human body. It's just part of life.
But violence.
But violence is not. But we'll show the violence, but you can't see the boobs.
All the time.
What? Wait a minute. It just seems backwards to me.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Whatever.
But yeah, in the Beast King Go Lion, in the first 5 episodes, they're capturing people from all the surrounding planets. They're turning them into slaves. They're making them fight each other to the death, Roman Colosseum style. The ones who don't survive are turned into gruel and fed to the other slaves. And you'll miss that if you're not really paying attention to what's going on. And then you find out about 25 episodes in, oh, by the way, we've conquered not just the solar system, but the entire friggin' galaxy. So all the other planets are stuff. They've just enslaved everybody. There's no hope. It's like you've got a space Hitler who's taken over the entire universe.
Yeah,
it's really dark.
Yeah, talk about dystopian.
Yeah, it is. And then you see why the actual Voltron and the lions and the the legendary lion bots and the guys that come together and the Princess Altair, why it's such a at first nobody cares. They're like, who are you idiots? You're not gonna beat Darth Vader and Space Hitler. You're not gonna beat them. Forget it. Just go home. Get out of it, you idiots. But eventually they realize they're making a dent, and like Star Wars, they're actually standing up to the Empire and making a dent in the forces.
Right. So the whole rebellion idea.
Yeah, it's very much like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when you start looking at some of those great Japanese sci-fi stories, it's like, they were doing Star Wars well before Star Wars. They were
that space battleship. Yeah, is that Yamamoto or Yamamoto? Like all those kind of ones of the 70s. A lot of good ones.
Yeah, we got the North American version. I think they called Star Blazers.
Yeah.
And, again, the original is always better, and the storyline was cool. Just the fantastic idea of taking an old battleship and turning it
Mhm.
into a spaceship.
Yeah,
It's like, how crazy is that? But
and
it
you've
works.
got Captain Harlock's another one of that same era,
Oh
and I think
yeah,
he appears in 2 or 3 different shows as well.
yeah. The whole space pirate curse idea
Mm.
was kind of trippy. I love that. They did a kind of a modern remake of that I saw on Netflix. It was pretty good.
Hmm.
The animation style was good. It followed a lot of the themes from the original storyline. And
Yeah, they do a lot of remakes of classic anime in Japan. They're often worth watching. Like, there's always multiple versions of oh geez, what's the guy? I'm thinking of the Godzilla and stuff in the oh man, I forgot the name. The other robot guy that's got like kind of sun eyes and the bit on his head.
oh, Ultraman,
Which one?
Ultraman.
Yeah, Ultraman. Because I mean, there's all the
Mhm.
live action ones, and then there's like anime ones, and then remakes of the show and remakes of and most of them are pretty good quality, whichever one you watch. Like,
Yeah. Again, I was pleasantly surprised Netflix did a remake of Ultraman as an kind of an anime style,
mhm.
and it wasn't terrible. You know,
Yeah,
it wasn't. It didn't have the goofiness of the '60s show. Monster
yeah,
of the Week kind of stuff I remember from those. Um, Good storyline and great artwork. That's one thing about when they revisit. You've got much better animation styles now with what they do
yeah.
with computers.
Some of them just look so gorgeous when you see the
Oh
modern
yeah.
updates of classic ones.
I mean, some of the hand drawn stuff back in the day was phenomenal. I mean, it was pure
Well, I
art.
think the original Gundam show that if you watch that now, you could not tell when if you knew nothing about it, you would have no idea when it was made. It looks just like any other show. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, it was amazing with that. But those guys got worked to death to do that stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, they were
it's
working
pretty much
big
like
hours.
self-enforced slave labor, falling asleep under the desk doing that.
Yeah, you hear some horror stories about what some of those artists had to go through just to get some of
Yeah,
those shows out on time.
and it's a whole cultural thing too, and it gets pretty. It's a bit depressing.
But some fun rabbit holes to go down to. I love
Mm,
doing deep dives. Especially it's kind of become a thing now where I get an
mm.
idea for a show or
Yeah.
doing something.
I
It's
do
like,
the same
okay,
thing.
so it's like, all right, I have a kernel of an idea. Where do I want to go with this? And I'll start doing some research. And it's like, oh, and I'll pull that thread. And it's like, oh, well, okay. And this guy wrote this, and then there's an obscure
Hmm.
version of this over here. And it's like, suddenly I have 10 pages of material. It's like, I've only got a 45-minute show, and I've got 2 hours worth of stuff. So it's like, I gotta filter through
Yeah,
this.
like I like last year. I was having a feeling. I'm like, I want to see some like classic wrestling and stuff, and I'm like, what am I going to do now? And I like start
Yeah.
buying figures, watching hundreds of hours of 80s, 90s wrestling. I'm reading books about the history of wrestling. I'm putting up biographies. I'm watching wrestling animes. Just
And that's
anything.
the stuff. I'm goofy like that. I love to watch like the director's notes when you buy
Yeah,
a DVD or something. It's like, yes, I love the film, but I want to see the making of. I want to talk. I
yeah.
want to
I,
listen to
I used to
talk
lie
about it.
awake at night with insomnia with my DVD collection. I'd watch a movie, and if I liked it, I'd immediately put the commentary on to fall asleep if I listened to it.
Yeah, some of those are great, especially when
Mm,
you can get the directors of whether it's the art director or
yeah,
one of the actual cast members to talk about the behind the scenes and how
yeah.
certain things are put together. Those are always fun.
Some
I'm going
some
to
of them are
be
like really good, insightful into the process, and
yeah.
it's like reading a really good, well researched article or something. It's the same thing. They're talking about it all behind the scenes, and then you get ones like I think it was on Dodgeball. It's got Vince Vaughn eating a bag of potato chips really loudly on purpose in the sound, going, and halfway through it they go, "Oh, we're going to leave now." And they put on the commentary to another movie and leave the studio, and it's
So
hilarious.
it's like they know nobody's going to care about dodgeball the commentary.
Yeah, yeah,
If you can
exactly.
dodge a
But
wrench.
it's really funny because they put on a commentary for I forget what the other movie was from the same studio, and I knew it was real because I had that other movie and I'd listened to it. I knew it was a genuine culture from another movie,
They probably just
and
said,
they plugged it.
let's see who actually catches this. So that's fun.
Yeah, so it's
But
like halfway through, they're just like he's eating his bag of chips, and then they go, "Oh, let's just go. Let's get out of here." Nobody cares.
which brings us back around to the
Yeah.
bat. When you're doing some of your deep dives and looking into
Yeah.
some of the behind the scenes in the art and in the writing of stories, where do you find that you get a lot of that information? Like
Yeah.
like for
It,
me,
it,
when they do like the graphic novel
mhm.
collections of stories, sometimes they'll have
Yeah.
notes in the back from the writer or the artist.
It's a real mixture because I'm a prolific note taker more than I'm a writer. I write notes about like here
Oh yeah, same thing.
that's just about the what I wrote this morning, just about category A through D of what are the different monster type characters in Batman comics from when he existed till 5 minutes ago.
Yeah,
But that's just my notes to actually do the research. That's not the research itself. So this
right.
morning I was looking up the Batman Scooby Doo stuff, just because it was more fun. And I'd already looked up last week. I was looking up Clayface, Killer Croc. I already
Right.
know about and read stories, but I was looking up what was the first appearance, what's the defining appearance, and then what's the retro or new modern version they've done in games and whatever else.
Right, and we should probably
But
tell the people at home what sparked all this is Johnny and I have been
yeah,
talking about doing a BCs and baddies on Batman
yeah,
villains, specifically the
and
monster
there's plenty
villains.
of them.
Oh yeah, the big ones that come
Uh,
to mind, of course, are Clayface, Killer
yeah.
Croc,
Mm-hmm.
the Man Bat is a classic.
Yep.
Again, another one from that classic Neil
That's the
Adams
top three
era.
I got on there.
Yeah, but there's
And
so
they've got the
many.
most appearances.
Doctor
And then I
Phosphorus,
went,
that's another good one. I'm sure he's
yeah,
on your list.
I'll do a quick overview of what's on this exciting card. Because I
Okay.
broke them into categories. I went, what's your core ones like that have been around for several decades and that they're cool and they're popular, and then the toys and the games, your Croc, Clayface, Man-Bat, and then you've got who are your other guys that you like your B-listers, your Doctor Death, your Mad Monk, Doctor Phosphorus, the Talons and Cordales, not really B-lister, but they're a zombie. I was trying to go what
Right.
actually classifies actual monsters, not just looking
Monster.
like monsters.
Right.
You got your Hugo Strange Monster Man, and go to other categories. I put like DCU frequent guests, Brave and the Bold animation. You got Swamp Thing, Solomon Grundy, Etrigan, Spectre. Can't read this one here. Ock something or other. I can't read my writing. It's helpful. Then I went. You've got your Elseworlds and miniseries. You've got your DC series of zombies. You've got Gotham City Monsters, which has Killer Croc and some other monster-themed characters in the miniseries I read last week.
Cool.
You've got Batman and Superman versus vampires and werewolves. I didn't know that existed, but I'm going to read that next week as part of research for the thing. You've
That
got
sounds fun. Yeah.
yeah, and it's by some horror writer I don't know, but it's meant to be proper horror. Then you got like your 90s Elseworlds Red Rain, the vampire trilogy with Batman, where he becomes like Dracula. And then
Right.
you've got from the same era, because I read these back then, you had Batman Predator, Batman Aliens, which is kind of cheating because they're not decent, but they're monsters, so fuck it, they're in
Right.
there.
Yeah.
Then you got Scooby Doo, and because that kind of balances out the Predator Aliens slaughter with a bit of fun, lighthearted Scooby Doo monsters.
Right.
But that's just for one article, and that's like just the start of it.
Oh yeah. I
But
mean,
to get
you
back
could
to
do a whole series with those. And what
yeah, but
sparked the idea was one of the favorite semi-modern stories that I read was Matt Wagner's. He did one like Batman and the Mad Monk, and then he did Batman and the Monster
is it
Monk.
a
And
trilogy?
yeah, the story was great in the fact that he goes back to early Batman. And it's like,
Yeah, that first couple of years of stuff.
yeah, he's like year 2, year 3, he's fighting
Yeah,
gangsters, he's fighting corrupt politicians, and then all of a sudden
you
he's
call it like
like,
Crescent Moon trilogy or something like that.
yeah, so he's dealing with just human criminals, and
Mm-hmm.
then he's suddenly faced with these monsters and supervillains
All
for
of a
the
sudden, we're
first
in Vincent
time.
Price territory.
Oh yeah, and even some Lovecraftian elements there that are kind of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
So seeing that first, seeing him go from being a very scientific, analytical detective to
Mm-hmm.
having to go into this realm of horror and pseudoscience and trippy stuff. It's like,
Yeah, it's something that's in there very strongly in that first year, and you can see it from the pulps and your Penny Dreadfuls and all that, and dodgy B movies, and then it's
sure,
not there for a long time, and it comes back like the 50s goes the weird wacky stories, But eventually they get back around and go, hang on, wasn't there a time when he had a bit of gothic and monster? Let's put some of that in there again instead of just all the superhero stuff. And I love that stuff. And that's like when Batman is going more into Hellboy territory and you're getting cool monsters. Because you read some of the good Hellboy stories and I read them and I go, this is just a Batman comic, but it's a red guy. It's like,
very
very
similar flavor.
I mean, it's more than that. It's more than that because I love Hellboy too. But it's a bit of X-Files, it's a bit of Batman, it's a bit of detective story. But when you read it, you go, hang on, you can just see what he's Batman in here. It's pretty much the same story.
What's the writer's name? Gianola, the fellow that's
Mike Mignola, yeah.
Manola, thank you. He did some Batman stories as well.
Yeah,
and
he's done one recently called The Doom That Came to Gotham. That's quite good.
Yes, very Lovecraftian. Great.
Actually, I think they're doing an animated version of that now too. What are those
hopefully
direct
movies?
Hopefully
they don't screw it up because that's a
hope for them. Half of them are garbage. Like they do, 50% are good, 50% are garbage.
Yeah, I was very disappointed. I love Hush. That's one of my favorite Jim Lee stories. Great Bat story because you get a lot of the great villains show up in that. It's a good storyline.
I like the art, but I thought the story was I thought it was okay, but it was a bit gimmicky. But it's become a classic. But people go, "Oh, it's so good," and I'm like, "Really? Is it that good?"
The art was great. Yeah, I love Jim Lee's art in that. And yeah, the story does have some funky bits when you look back at it. Yeah, I do kind of look at it. I think
that's the problem of monthly periodicals more than the writer is what I'm getting at. I'm not blaming the writer; it's more the format that.
Right. When you have to
stretch
a story out over a year
at the end, like what's happening? Come back next week and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, some of these adaptations, it's like just follow the script. Perfect example would be
don't fuck it up.
The Dark Halloween, or I mean the Long Halloween. Excuse me. Long Halloween. Beautiful Tim Sale and who do we work with on that? I'm terrible with names, but great story. Artwork was. Thank you. Yes, the artwork was very minimalist. It worked with the story.
Yeah, those crazy Joker teeth, man. Like,
oh man, so trippy. But again, it was a good detective story, and it put Batman right in his element where he needed to be. He's got this mystery killer. He's got to solve
the red herrings.
Oh yeah, and then I love the fact he goes to the calendar man. It's like I need to get inside the mind of a homicidal maniac. Well, I'm going to go talk to a homicidal maniac and get some insights. And it's like it just works.
It's like Silence of the Lambs. It's like she's picking his mind. Yeah.
And it totally makes sense he would do that. It's like he has all of Arkham to go and interview and
So what else am I doing? Go talk to some criminals.
Yeah.
Got lunch, got that dinner with high society, but go talk to some criminals.
So when I heard they were doing an animated version, I'm like, oh, that's going to be so awesome. And the art was good. I mean, the style that they used for doing the cartoon was good. Yeah. And they dropped the ball on the story. It's like they decided to make some changes for whatever reason. It's like, why? That wasn't necessary.
Why? I get it in Hollywood, but I do not get it when it's a direct feature animated. There's no excuse.
Yeah. It's like, just do it beat for beat, because the reason you're doing it is because the original story was so good. Why change it? Oh, we want to put in a twist. I don't need a twist. I just want to see the story on the screen.
Yeah, it's like you've got a storyboard that's called a comic book. Follow it.
It's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, after they finished, what was it? They had Justice League and Unlimited. And I forget what was immediately after that. I mean, you had, I think, Young Justice or whatever. They were started doing those animated features that were solo direct DVD market ones. And the first few were good, and then it was sort of like they were going downhill. But then occasionally there's a good one again, and then now there's more bad ones than good ones.
I would agree. I would say some of the early ones, like the Crisis on Two Earths story that they pulled from the Grant Morrison era, that was good.
That one was decent. I like the comic better, but the animation was decent.
Yeah, it was a good story. They pulled, it was a classic Justice League. You're actually seeing them fight villains instead of having some sort of existential crisis or some other angsty stuff. I think it was around Flashpoint that things started going weird, because they
Yeah.
started trying to bring in the new 52 elements, and it was like,
Yeah.
that's not my
Actually,
Superman. I don't
I
like.
enjoyed the Flashpoint as a one-off animation. I think I actually enjoyed that animation better than the miniseries because it was sort of more compact and not going all over the place. But
Right.
in general, that was yeah, I agree. It's around they were like, oh, let's just change something for the sake of changing it.
Yeah, I like the idea of Flashpoint as a way to reinvent and
Mhm,
reinvigorate the stories and kind of reset to ground
mhm,
zero. It's like, you know, the Flash has altered history and things will be different and there will be ramifications. However, comma,
mhm.
some of the writers they got for New 52 just didn't mesh with characters. It's like a couple, like the first maybe 5 issues in some cases were really
Mhm.
good. And then it was like,
Yeah,
oh, where do we go from here? I don't know.
and it jumps to
It,
someone else.
yeah,
I enjoyed the Snyder Capullo Batman New 52, and well, three quarters of it. In the end, it kind of trailed off into like whatever. Um,
right.
and I enjoyed the I think it's Cliff Chang or Cliff Chiang Azarello Wonder Woman. I really some people hate it. I really enjoyed it because it was like going back to like classical Greek monsters and myths and
Yeah. They
bringing back
brought in,
mythology into it.
exactly, they brought more of the mystical. It's like she is a
Yeah,
magical creature in and of
yeah,
herself.
and
It
and
makes
and
sense.
I enjoy the story, and the art was amazing, and that was one of my favorite modern Wonder Woman stories. Really enjoyed that.
Right. So there were some storylines and elements that were decent. I kind of liked where
Hmm.
they restarted with Superman as making him more of an outlaw, a vigilante. He was more roughshod.
Yeah,
It
well, they were
reminded
going
me
back
very
to
much
the
of,
original Superman. It was
yeah,
for the people and the underclass, and
but that was only for like 5 issues, and then
yeah,
I don't know where they went.
changed it again.
Yeah, it was like you were doing so well. What happened? You run out of
Yeah,
ideas? I don't know.
yeah, it's
I
like
mean,
you got your Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Justice League, and then when it gets to everything else, the quality just starts
yeah.
going down after those few issues.
And then they started trying to shoehorn in other IPs that they bought. Like at
Yeah,
that point, they had brought
Wildstorm,
in, yeah,
Planetary, and all that.
yeah. So you've got the Wildstorm universe. You've got the
It's too much. I like all
yeah,
those things, but you can't have like here's your mainstream comic, here's your indie comic, which is doing a meta commentary on classic comics, but now they're in the same universe. It doesn't fucking work. It's stupid.
oh yeah, yeah. Like the whole Watchmen debacle. It's like
Yeah.
Alan
Oh,
Moore's
that's oh
Watchmen.
god.
It was a standalone. It was a commentary on something, and it should have been left
Yeah.
alone. And then they're like, "Oh,
Well,
let's put the Watchmen into normal continuity." It's like,
yeah.
no,
No,
don't do that. That
that's
doesn't
that's
work.
the one thing where I agree with the old bearded grumble bum who hates everything. But I mean, he doesn't. But you know,
Right. There's a reason he's angry
yeah,
about some of these choices. It's like
yeah.
I get it. I totally get it. They took a great concept that was very successful, and then they gave it
He
to
was
some hack
he
writers.
was
And
old.
yeah,
Well, in case anyone doesn't know, I was referring to Alan Moore. But
yes,
he was in Google News again just this morning, complaining about comics.
understandable. You know,
Once they got on him, I love it. I love that he sticks to his values and what he's on about, and he's a brilliant writer. Uh, but it's anytime every year or two, it's like here's Alan Moore grumbling about comic. It's never anything different, so it's kind of comical.
yeah. I think two of my favorites from that era would be Alan Moore, and I liked Grant Morrison. He
Yeah.
was willing to do some out there stuff,
Yeah, I listened
and
to a heap of his talks and that, and different podcasts and YouTube, and where he's talking about doing his director's commentary and all the stuff he wrote. Basically, it was pretty interesting.
yeah, and some of his ideas, very meta, very,
Yeah, well, he got into all sorts of stuff. He got into what did he get into? He got into like the old Crowley stuff. He got into like the Kabbalah and metaphysical. Went through all the.
right.
He went from being straight edge, no drink, no drugs, to trying every kind of drug and drink in his 20s, and then he got away from it, settled down, got married. But he still gets into like the semi mystical alternative sort of stuff and puts it into the stories. It makes it more interesting.
Oh yeah. One thing I did like, and some people did not like the Morrison era of JLA, but one thing I think he did well is he said, okay, you have a pantheon.
Mhm.
Let's look at the parallels between the Roman and Greek gods
Mm.
and what we have here as a modern pantheon with the seven that he put together as his
Mm.
JLA, his core group. Unfortunately, he had Kyle Rayner. He didn't have one of the real Green Lanterns to work with at the
Yeah.
start, and he had he started with mullet Superman and then got electric blue
Yeah.
Superman. Finally got back to a
Then
normal.
you had the electric company Superman.
Yeah, that was a bad look.
Yeah, I didn't even
Anyway.
know back then, but it was referring to another nonsense 50s comic when they said that.
Yeah, there was a Superman red, Superman blue thing,
Yeah.
and it was, I don't know. They were
But
trying
yeah,
to.
the other thing he said about his run on Justice League, like years later, is he said, "Look, he goes, I grew up, I read Marvel, I read DC, I read all the classic characters. Like, let Marvel have all the angst and the Peter Parker paying the bills. He's like, JLA, they're going to fucking win if I'm writing it. It's like they're going to win every time because they're the guys, they're the super team, like they're the best."
And
So
then
that
when
was,
you have a powerhouse like that are demigods, who do you put them up against? So he started
yeah,
doing more cosmic stories and
yeah,
more,
it's true. Like
it's like, okay, yeah, now we have a challenge. It makes sense that this group would have to come together and deal with this because who else could or would,
I like that cosmic sort of stuff, and I like the old like who's like Adam Warlock and Marvel and the original Guardians and all the Eternity Eagle and all that, and then they started putting all that kind of stuff into the more modern DC, which I like that kind of sub or cosmic space stuff, but they went like a little bit too far, or not so much too far, but too often with it, with all the crossovers and the mini series and the events that just go on, and they don't end. I can't imagine anyone never read comics. How do they get into it? It's like
Yeah,
baffling.
it was very frustrating when I was trying to keep up with certain stories, and it's like, okay, you're going to do another event. How many more crises are we going to have? And then every time you
Yeah,
do a crisis, I've got to buy
2011,
6 other
12
books.
million crises.
Yeah, it's like just I read this book. I want to buy this book. I don't want to buy all these crossovers just to read the story. And the thing that frustrated me the most is you buy one of the crossover episodes and it's like, well, this is totally useless. It has absolutely nothing to do. It's a side
Nothing to
story.
do with it.
Yeah, but
I,
you
I
got
don't
to.
mind. I don't mind when they do the events and the stuff, but it used to be like in the 80s you had like Secret Wars, but that wasn't it wasn't great, but it was fun. But that was an
Yeah,
event. It wasn't like here's an event every year, then every 6 months, then every other bloody month, and it's just
right.
event. There's no real story. It's just events.
And they get overdone to the point where it's like, how many times are you going to threaten all of existence and
Yeah,
then
and
try to
reset the
rewrite
universe.
everything? Yeah, it's like, no, how many
There's the
resets?
button. Just press it again. Batman, whose
Oh,
turn is it? Wonder Woman. You press it this time. I'm bored. We've done it last
right.
time.
And then that whole trope of let's kill off heroes. That was a thing.
Yeah,
Death of Superman. Oh, well, now we got to kill off Wonder Woman. Now we got to kill off
I was
Batman. Now we
thinking
got to
about
kill
that
off.
the other day in the '90s. Remember they did early '90s. They killed or broke Batman's back. John Paul came in and did Nightfall. Superman died, but got better because of the sun, and then had all the other, this reign of the Superman. And at the
Right.
same time, also Spider-Man didn't die, but he got replaced by the Ben Reilly clone. So all three of your big male icons, I mean, obviously Wonder Woman's big as them, but all your big male icons, they all got swapped. They've done it with every character over the years, but they all
Right.
had that around the same time, which is incredible to me that they did that to those big icons all at the same time.
Yeah, it's like I understand you want to try different stories and you want to try different things, but it's like do it in an Elseworld and don't do it in normal continuity. Or if you're going to do stuff in normal continuity, go back to what you did in the old days, where
Yeah,
like what they did with
Earth
the
2
just
and
yeah, well, like with the Justice Society, it's like they let them
oh yeah,
grow. They let them grow old. They let them have
yeah.
legacy heroes. And it was cool when back in the day you had Batman and Catwoman actually got married. Huntress was their daughter,
Yeah,
and she
Hutchins.
carried
Yeah.
on the legacy. And then
Mhm.
Crisis comes, is like, well, how do we mash all this into one continuity? It's like you
Yeah.
can't. It won't work.
Yeah.
And they
Did you
try
ever
to.
read any of the John Byrne Generations Superman Batman one?
I did.
He did
It
that
was.
same thing where they're all aging and getting old, but then they become like immortal or whatever happens. But they did the same thing where there was generations of Superman and Batman kids who grew up and then their grandkids and
Yeah, and I like those kind of stories. It's like
mm,
there's no reason why you can't allow these characters to age and have different phases of their life. They don't have to be perpetually 29 to 30. It's
yeah,
like
it's
you
just
can
money.
tell good stories.
That's why you
Yeah,
can't age.
money. Yeah, it's well, you have and you have a concept, and everybody wants that concept to stay static, but yet you want the
Well,
stories to continue. It's like
yeah,
that was
I
one
was, I
thing.
was
It was one
very
good
aware of
thing
that
with
reading.
Miller's, Dark Knight Returns is the idea of where does this go? It's like
Mhm.
how long can he be a vigilante? It's like your physical body can
Yeah,
only
yeah.
do so much, and
Well, that's where some of those miniseries and Elseworlds do go. Well, what if he was older, and what if it was his son or grandson, and get to do a kind of end or final story as that
yeah,
follows on from the origins of the character. You ever read any Savage Dragon?
I have a little bit.
Yeah, because he
Eric
Eric Larson for Image
Larson,
Comics, but he did. He grew up reading all the '60s Marvel. He loved like Calvin Hobbes and Fantastic Four from Lee Kirby. He went from the start of his character in the '90s. I'm going to age my character in real time just because everybody else doesn't in the comics, and because it's his creator and character. He could do it.
right?
So he actually did it, and that comic's been going for I don't know, like 20 years or have maybe it's 30 years now because I'm not good with time. Because I read it for a long time and then I didn't because he went on hiatus for several years and it was basically cancelled and eventually came back
Mm,
because he moved up in the company. He had a lot of responsibilities plus family and that. Um,
right.
but his character got replaced by the son in real time, and his character continued growing old in the real world and real. So whatever year, if you look up like on the internet, Savage Dragon, I don't know, 91, 92, whenever it started, that plus today is how old the Savage Dragon is in real world years.
That's cool. I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
pretty
he did that
interesting.
as a concept, as a thing, because of what you're saying about how the characters don't get to age and the Superman and Batman and all that and Spider Man.
Right, and the way they do some of the storylines, it's like what takes us a year to get the story. Well, it's only
Yeah,
been a few weeks or a few months in comic time, so continuity gets a
yeah.
little wonky, especially when
Actually,
they
that's
try to tie in real world events. It's like, well, where does
mhm.
that fit in this year?
The whole North American comic characters not aging because they got too popular and all the media and they've got to keep them around. And in Japan, it's like different. It's like every year there's new Power Rangers. Every year there's a new kaiju monster. It's like another generation's born and it moves
Right.
on. And you get remakes of legacy characters, but they constantly crank out millions of new shows and live action, and they keep things going pretty much in real time as far as things just keep moving and new people get born, new teams, and they don't
Yeah.
always. You've got your icons, your Astro Boy and your Godzilla, but they don't cling to the past like the American comics do, where they're just always regurgitating the same thing. Even though there's a lot of repetition, there's so
Sure.
much new stuff they're always just cranking out in every genre imaginable.
And even legacy characters will evolve. I mean, how many
Yeah,
different transitions and revisions have we seen with like Godzilla? He's not always the
yeah,
same.
yeah.
Um,
That's another good example. Yeah,
so yeah,
I,
it is
I might jump.
interesting that
I
the
might jump back
cultural
to.
difference.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just think I'll jump back to an earlier question because you're asking about how I look up like research or sources and
Hmm.
stuff like that. And I found it's a real mix of stuff where I'll look at like I'll watch a movie, there might be a DVD commentary where I'll listen to say, I don't know, I can't remember what's on Batman Begins, but if it even has a commentary, but let's say it does. And that whole thing, there might be one little idea and I'll write it down. And then I might be reading another book about Batman, or I might be reading a book about something completely unrelated to Batman. And a particular sentence or phrase or idea just stands out to me. And I grab a pen and I write that down. And I do that a bunch of times. And eventually, sometimes it's several different articles. Sometimes a bunch of stuff goes into one article. I'll listen to podcasts and interviews if they're around. There's not many, but there's more than there used to be for old time. I mean, sadly, a lot of the old time DC guys are dead now, of course. So and they're
Yeah.
dropping like flies, as a lot of wrestlers are, because they're going up in years.
And we used
Um,
to have some great references. Like back in the day, there was Wizard magazine, and there were
yeah,
articles in
yeah, I
there.
used to read Wizard,
Yeah, so you had articles about
Toy Fair, the
writers and
Wizard,
artists. Toy Fair was another great
Action
one.
Figure Digest.
Alter Ego was another good one,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it was a chance to
Oh
see
yeah,
behind
actually,
the.
Alter Ego. I picked up a few of those a few years back. They had a Harley Quinn special about cost me like $30 an issue to import it because you can't get it here. But they had a couple of Batman specials and a couple of Harley Quinn Joker stuff, and they were good. But yeah, I'll
Yeah,
listen to podcasts, interviews, anything, and it's usually one little idea or thing that jumps out, and I'll note it down, and that can become a whole article or a piece of an article.
yeah. And I love following those threads sometimes.
Mm.
especially if you're looking for something that's kind of esoteric or an odd, just bit of trivia about a subject, and you're like, that's interesting. I've never heard that. Where did that come from? And then you kind of
Yeah,
follow it back to a source, and it's like,
actually,
oh, okay.
one of the best ones I listened to years and years ago when the early days of the Kevin Smith podcast, he did the interviews with creators and people worked on Batman. He did 3 episodes, about 3 hours worth of Den O'Neill, which I love. I listen to it every 12 months because it's just, I mean, sadly he's gone now too, but they want to listen to him talk about his whole, not just Batman, his whole career from being a reporter in his early days and different jobs and his marriages and suffering and all kinds of things.
Right. And all those things
Those,
are infused into how he did
yeah,
his
yeah, yeah.
storytelling. You definitely see
And
that.
all the things like Den O'Neill's written so many Batman. I mean, Bill Finger, Den O'Neill, the two guys have written more Batman stories than anyone else on the planet. But what are the movies they watch? What are the things they've read?
Yeah.
Where do they
What
go to
was the
school? Who are they
influence?
married to? Do they have kids? All those things all get
Like,
influenced into
the
their writing.
classic Green Lantern, Green Arrow team up, the
Yeah,
hard traveling heroes.
yep.
That era, again, it's like it was a perfect mix of, a good storyteller with a good idea and saying, okay, how do we take these characters that are kind of tired at this point and give them a new direction? And it's
Yeah,
like, wow, you know, looking at, I love the idea of taking the cosmic hero of Green Lantern and making him look at
great.
real world problems on the street. Yeah, it's
It,
one of the,
yeah, it is.
and
It's funny. You see, Denny in a lot of the modern DC documentaries and behind the scenes, some of the movies, and he's in like nice clothes. He's kind of bald on top, but you forget that's not what he was back there. He had the long, shaggy hair. He was
he was
like
a
raging
rebel.
against the machine.
Yeah,
He wasn't all buttoned down. He was like pushing boundaries.
exactly. Man, so many great artists and writers and creatives, and I don't see that in modern writing, at least in American
Mm.
or Western comics anymore. It seems like
They're
all
probably
the
somewhere
classics.
else.
Yeah, they're doing something else somewhere else. The creative teams they've got on some of
Probably on
these.
Etsy or somewhere else doing
Oh
things.
Lord, who knows? It's just sad. I can't remember
It's
the last modern comic that I read that I actually
mm,
enjoyed. At least from the
it's
big, DC and Marvel. A lot
yeah.
of independent stuff is still good. Even some of the IDW and Dynamite stuff, they've got some
Yeah, I
good
like
stuff
that.
going on over
They
there.
do some of the best modern stuff, I think, for just like kind of creator-driven stuff and or license, but also more creator influence than not so much corporate influence. And
Yeah, it's just a shame you've got all these great iconic characters that belong in
mm,
the stables of DC and Marvel,
yeah, all
and
the
it's like,
multiverses have absorbed, and now the Charlton comics and all the other characters they
yeah.
sucked up with the vacuum cleaner.
But if you don't have good writers, you can only do so
Yeah,
much with a character. And
yeah.
yeah,
Actually, my favorite thing from a few years, maybe it was 10 years ago. I don't because I'm always reading stuff years after it was done. The I think it was Alex Ross. I think it's Jim Kruger superpowers, and it's all Golden Age era superheroes
right.
done
Under
in the
the
style of
Dynamite,
like Justice Society and that. But a
yeah,
lot of them are like rights-free characters that they could use in that book and who have forgotten. But like you got the original Daredevil, not the Marvel Daredevil, the original Daredevil. The
right,
old guy was in a red costume. The Eric
right. Kind
Larson
of
also
red
using
balloon
Savage
Motley's
Dragon.
look. And then there was the Green Llama was another classic
Yeah, the
one they
Green
brought
Lava.
back. The Black Terror.
Yeah,
And
he's in it. He's actually a major character in that. Yeah, the Black Terror.
And what's cool is it reintroduces these characters to a whole
Hmm.
new generation, and then they're reading this and they're liking it. It's like, well, back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, there were all these other stories of these same
Yeah, it's
characters, and
heaps,
then they start,
heaps.
hey, let's look at all that backlog stuff. So very
Actually, that
cool.
reminds me. I was looking at some book the other night. Do you know Mike Madrid, the comics guy?
I don't.
He's only
Doesn't
done a
ring a
bit
bell.
here and there because he writes. He's written some non-fiction books. He did one that was all just about female superheroes, like the entire history of every major female superhero from like the Golden Age era um, up to the modern stuff. And he also did that one was just a non-fiction book. I think it's called Supergirl something something, and the other two was like one was Vixens, Dames, and Divas, and it's got reprints of just old, obscure, all female ones. It's got like Sheena or Shanna in there, and all sorts of weird one-off characters back from that golden age era. They're just forgotten, and he collected them in these couple of volumes. They're really cool.
That sounds fun. That's the kind of rabbit hole I like going down. I like seeing, especially when you look at it, it's like you have to take it in the historical context of when it was written. Some heroes don't age well. Obviously.
Yeah, that's true. I like those the weird characters, the bizarre ones, even if they don't age well.
Yeah, it's like you look at modern sensibilities in writing, it's like that's just goofy or campy. But it's like at the time it was written, it was exciting. It was something new. So, and at least I feel, some characters fit in a certain time period and they don't fit when you try to modernize them.
Well, I mean, you got the same time you had Batman, you had Black Bat and Black Book Detective, and that fits in that era, but it doesn't really fit. I mean, Dynamite's still some modern ones, but it doesn't fit the same in the modern era.
Right.
And
actually, and what was the other one?
Yeah.
A lot of those they're very pulp era, and they should stay there.
Yeah. I think I love Fantastic Four, but they work best in the 60s. They don't work as well in other decades. I'm glad they're here because I like them, but they just work best in that era.
Yeah, that's one thing I was talking with Granddad Jim about one time. It's like, if they were going to do a really good MCU version, I would love to see them actually do like they did with the X-Men. It's like, go back to the 60s.
Yeah, why not?
Tell a story in the 60s and then get them stuck in the negative zone for a couple decades and then bring them back.
And
then
it's film. It doesn't have to be in the modern day. It can be the great thing about film. You can set it in any year in human history that's before the year we're in now, because we've got references to stuff that we know about. We can make it realistically that year. It could be 1920s, 1800s, 1700s.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I think the first Wonder Woman film was so successful is they chose the World War I era to introduce her. It's like, that kind of works. It fits,
It worked. And like at the time I was annoyed. I was like, but she came in World War II. Over they just fucking her out. But no, they just went, no, there's too many other films already World War II. Let's just do a different war.
Yeah, but it worked. It was a little different. Definitely different from her historical origins, but I liked it. I liked the way it was done. The second movie, not so much. But the first one,
no, I got halfway. I got halfway through that and halfway through a bit of whiskey and fell asleep. Turned it off. Never watched the rest of it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because man, I
was looking forward to that movie so much, and I was like, oh god, this is awful.
Yeah, I would have rather seen someone who looked more like some of the Amazons that we saw in like the Snyder cut when they show him on Themyscira. Some of these beautifully well built women that look like Amazons, total bodybuilding.
Yeah, well,
it's like that's what Wonder Woman should be.
That's the other thing that bugged me about it is like, I mean, there's always stuff around how women are portrayed in media and comics, but I don't look at it in terms of like, well, is this sexist or is it about fit? Is this person an athlete? Can they move? Can they jump or climb or fight? And I'm not saying they have to do that to be in the movie, but you should at least have something so you can have that presence on screen. So, if you're going to be an Amazon.
Yeah, one thing with Gal Gadot, she has grace. She has a very graceful style, and she did the action scenes. They looked good.
Yeah.
But when I think of the Amazon, I'm thinking like what Darwin Cook did. He made her a powerhouse. She was taller than Superman.
Yeah, she should be. She should be taller than bloody Superman because she's an Amazon.
Exactly. And speaking of Darwin Cook, another great writer, taken from us way too soon. It was
that was very sad when he passed.
Oh man, I love his art. I love his writing, and he has so many stories yet to tell.
Yeah, he's done some really good books on that. What's it, Parker?
Yeah. The Parker was good. Hard-boiled detective kind of story. His run on Catwoman was good.
Oh, that Catwoman's great. That's so good.
And
that's my favorite version of Catwoman.
He made Selena somebody you really cared about in and out of the costume. It's like
and he brought back that Slam Bradley from like the 40s.
Yes, and it worked. Slam Bradley is a cool character. One of the best recent Batman stories, Ego. We talked about that a little earlier before we did the broadcast here. Ego is such a great story of looking into
Yeah,
the
I've read it so
psyche.
many times, and like the story, it's just what the whole thing is just fantastic. Actually,
Oh
that was a
yeah,
book I referenced. That I mean, I'd read it for fun, but that's a book I referenced when I was writing articles to get into the mindset of what he was looking at in that story.
yeah, it's very well done. And of course, his work with was it New Frontier, where
Yeah,
he
I love that.
really,
I only got to read it
yeah.
from the library. I still don't own it because it went out of print and couldn't get it. But I love that
Oh,
book so much.
it's one that I have a hard copy of the collected
Yep, I
edition.
know.
I
I've seen
read
it.
it.
I've seen it on your videos.
Yeah, I read it occasionally. And every time I go back to it, it's like every time I see something where they've screwed up the heroes in modern genre, I go back to Darwin Cook and it's like, okay, I like this story. I want to read this. It takes me back to
Yeah,
that happy place.
take me back to the
That
good
and
place.
yes, that one and the Alex Ross stories that he did.
Like Kingdom Come. And,
Well, Kingdom Come, yes,
yeah.
but I'm thinking more of when he did kind of his homage to the classic Silver Age, where he did World's
Oh, right.
Greatest. You know, he did like a Superman Peace on Earth. He did the Shazam
Oh, yeah,
story.
the big oversized
Yeah,
periodical
the
one, like
oversized.
giant newspaper magazine size ones.
Yeah, I love his painted style. Some people are like, eh, but I'm like, you know, he does heroic good.
Yeah, yeah.
He
I love that.
understands.
I love those books, and I only got to read them because I used to have them in the public library. Because I saw them in the comic shop, but I was buying like stupid Punisher and Spider Man, and I'm like, I'll buy them next week. I'll buy them. Went out of print. Could
Oh,
never get them
yeah,
for a decade.
dude,
Gone.
yeah.
I mean, they did that collected
Fortunately,
edition, but the big
right.
ones you could just call.
Yeah. I've got a hardcover collected edition of those Alex Ross stories, and again, it's
Yeah,
one of my treasured possessions.
yeah.
I go
I
back
love
to.
that. I love the bit when you see Superman flying over. I can't remember his thing. He's like holding a thing. He's like flying over like the fields of Bali. It's just
Yes.
so like Richard Donner, like Superman. Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
beautiful.
It's like he is supposed to be, larger than life, demigod type.
It's majestic Superman. There you go, Bjorn.
Yes. Yes. Very majestic. But at the same time, he's a Kansas farm boy, and I love the idea that Superman is an identity and a persona that he puts on. He's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
Clark. Clark is not the
yeah.
disguise. He is Clark.
That's it. Yeah,
Whereas, and the juxtaposition is with Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is the disguise.
yeah,
He's really Batman. I mean,
yeah. I
that,
like when writers like Paul Dini or Jeff Loeb that they do it that way.
yeah, and that's the way it makes sense. It's like
Yeah,
the dedication and the psychosis of
yeah,
Batman. It's like if he doesn't do this, if he didn't have his war on crime, his
yeah,
crusade, he would be a villain.
yeah.
He,
It's like
he would,
what else he gonna do? It's
yeah,
something.
he's driven, and it works. And with the right writer, it's great. With the wrong
Yeah,
writer, you get what you get. But speaking
yeah. Like
of
I
oddball
like it.
characters, you mentioned what was it, Lord Deathman?
Yeah, Lord
That's a
Deathman.
fun one. Talking about
He's
Japanese
cool
influence.
because you got the '70s one. I mean, you got the original Lord Deathman, and then he's in the Batmanga as well.
Yes, and I loved how I think it was Morrison when he was doing Batman Incorporated. He
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
brought
Sorry,
in
and in the Morrison run. Yeah, and the
yeah,
Morrison run, he bring them back. So that's your three. There's only really three major eras or appearances, and they're all pretty cool and fun.
right. He's such a ridiculous villain.
He is, and just the name Lord Deathman.
Deathman, yes, but it's fun, and that was one thing Grant Morrison did was fun. He did fun
Yeah,
stories, even if they were
yeah.
goofy and out
He
there.
on the interviews he did with Kevin Smith, he talked about how when he did his run for research, he went back and read something from every decade of Batman, including all the crazy 50s, what if, sci-fi, flying around, jetpacks, aliens, batshit crazy stuff. And he went, I love it. I'm going to put something of all of that into all the stories in the run. So you got
Yeah,
Batman of Zur-En-Arrh, where he's in that crazy purple and yellow and red costume,
right.
where it was the guy from the other planet, but in the story it's a Batman persona, like a backup reboot when his mind gets wiped and it reboots to this bit to the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh with the baseball bats.
It was so great, yeah. And
Yeah.
then the
And
Batmite,
Batmite,
bringing
yeah,
Batmite back as a part of
Batmite,
his broken psychosis. It's like
yeah,
that's
yeah, and it gives it a reason
fun.
for him to be there. Like, and
Yeah,
I even like he even incorporated stuff like Batman, Adam West Batman. He's like, oh, that's when Batman had some drugs and he was seeing like I had power in the air and hallucinating.
yeah. And it's like again with Batman International, he's like, okay, long before the Spider-Verse, it's like, okay, how do we do all these different takes on Batman? So,
Yeah,
you
actually,
know,
they were in the Batman Scooby Doo. They were in there again this morning. I was reading the
nice.
international whatever heroes like the Batman of all the different nations.
Right. So he had like the Native American Batman, he had the
Yeah,
Batman of South America, he had the
yeah.
Batman of England, which was Knight and Squire. I love those. Those were fun.
Actually, he brought back the original Batwoman too. The original
Yeah.
Batwoman, not the later ones. She was in it as
Right.
well.
The one in the yellow and red
Yeah,
costume.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, what was her name? She was.
I get
Shoot.
confused because it's I think it was like Kathy or something because they use the same kind of naming convention going to the other Batwoman, but then it's a
Kane.
different
Right.
person. Yeah,
Kathy Kane, I think. But yeah,
yeah,
when they reinterpreted Batwoman, they kind of took some of that and put in there.
yeah.
I can't remember who did the semi-modern Batwoman too. That was another kind of interesting take because
Hmm.
it's in the Bat family, but she's off on her own thing. She's not part of the team, but she kind of does. And it's like some of
She
those
wasn't
early
at
stories.
first, but then they brought her into it, and they've done quite a few stories where she's like the focus of them, and they make it that she's Bruce Wayne's cousin in the modern ones.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's where the Kane family tie-in is.
Yeah. It was like the
So
Wayne and the Kane.
right, and again, some of the early stories were good, and then it kind of wanders off into some strange lands. But they did some good writing there for a minute. And it was that was one of those characters that she just happened to be, LGBT, whatever alphabet.
Yeah.
It was like it didn't define her. She was a
No, that
good
was part of the
character.
character and the conception of that modern
Yeah,
Batwoman. Yeah.
and it was just, to me, it was well done. It was like, yes, this is part of who she is, but
Hmm.
she's a hero first, and yes,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
part of her
I
lifestyle,
I
and it's
like
part of
all
how
the
you're going to
versions
write
of
the
the
character.
Batwoman character.
Yeah, it's like I've got nothing against diversity, but don't just do diversity for diversity's sake. Do a good story,
It's
and
it's
then
just bad writing. It's just bad and lazy
it's
writing.
that. Yeah, it's like
It's
if
trying
you're
to
going
make
to
something
create
an
a
issue
character,
rather than making it a central character
yeah,
or value coming out. It outwardly going. Oh, what's the appearance? How will it rate in our metrics online? It's not writing. It's nonsense.
right. And that's one of the complaints of Whovians is
I haven't watched
nothing.
that season, so I can't complain about it. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I've
for
only
me,
watched it with the Capaldi and haven't seen past that.
yeah, Capaldi was my last Doctor. I mean, I did try the Whitaker era. She is a good actor. It's not her. It's the writing.
Mhm.
The writing
I
stunk.
never blame the actress. The same thing Michael French is on the Richard Blasting. I don't blame the actor. It's who wrote this fucking. If something's bad,
Oh,
who wrote this? Who directed? Who produced? That shoot them. Don't shoot the actor.
yeah. It's like I think she did a good job with what she had to work
Mhm.
with. I watched the first season of her Doctor, and there were elements of it. It's like I wanted to like it. I like her. I
Mhm.
don't like the writing. The stories were just crap, and I just lost interest. And apparently, so did a lot of other people. So it
I'll
had
probably
nothing to
watch it
do.
later this year because I kind of I don't have access to it on like DVD, but it's on various streaming networks. If something's on it, I'll watch a couple of seasons and then I'll see something else down the track. And yeah.
Right. So just like with like with my running back to Darwin Cook, I always run back to some of the earlier DVDs I have.
Give me
It's
some
like,
Tom Baker,
give me some Tom Baker, give me some some
Sylvester
Davidson
McCoy.
era. Yeah. Oh yeah, Sylvester McCoy had some fun bits. But I even liked some of the early
Pertwee and
reinventions, like when with David Tennant was awesome.
I like David Tennant a lot as an actor. So
Yeah, I liked Eccleston. I like some of the Matt Smith stuff.
yeah,
With Matt Smith era, they brought in more of like the storytelling kind of fable with his
yeah,
relationship with his first companion after his
yeah,
regeneration, and
yeah.
the girl who
I've got to
waited. The
go
whole
back and
idea.
watch those. I've watched all the Capaldi, most of the Tennant, the Eccleston, and I've only seen some of the other face bloke that. Yeah, his face is always very rubbery. The
Oh,
one- um, the guy the guy you just said, the younger guy, Matt Smith.
Matt Smith.
But
Yes.
I've got a friend over in New Zealand named Chris who's a hardcore lifelong fan of Doctor Who, and he's like, "No, watch them, they're good." I'm like, "Are they?" I don't know because I like it, but casually. I just watch it here and there. You know?
Yeah, like again, Russell T Davies, his era, they weren't all zingers, but they were good, and there was good plot points. There were good storylines. Some of the stuff that came after was kind of hit and miss.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It
yeah,
does very good for one-off stories in that show. For like one-off X-Files, Twilight Zone stuff, they do pretty good one-off stories.
yeah, and again, in the hands of the right writer, it's great. If you've got a good writing team, if you've got good direction, you're going to have something great because you've got all the tools in the toolbox or the TARDIS. You've got a great lineage, you've got history, you've got great villains, and if you put it in the hands of the right writer, it's brilliant. If you put it in the hands of a hack, well, you get what you get.
I rewatched the Lego Batman movie this week, which I haven't seen since it was in the cinema, so that's a few years ago. They had the Daleks in there. I don't even remember that, but there's Daleks in it.
There's so many Easter eggs in that film,
and they had what's the one Gurgi likes, the big the Harry was in the thing the Groenius making.
The Kraken.
Yeah, that was it. When it's first in there, it's King Kong and a green thing, and I thought, oh, it must be Godzilla's thing. But then when you sit close up, I'm like, well, Godzilla doesn't have 4 arms.
Right.
I was halfway through and I went, oh, it's the Kraken.
Yeah, so many great little fun homages and little characters. You have to watch it a couple times. Lego movie did that too.
There's Catman in there. There's Wonder Woman. There's Green Lantern.
So many fun things, and it was a good story. And the guy, what's his name? Will Arnett, the guy who does the voice for the
from Arrested Development.
So good. He did a great Batman.
He was great, and I like how he did it real like Brave and the Bold style, like Diedrich Bader, like just over the top.
Over the top, but it works. And then
I loved it. That is my favorite modern Batman movie. So stuff in other movies.
That's the thing is, I don't mind reinterpretations. I don't mind watching the goofy Lego version and then watching the super serious Nolan trilogy.
I like to
have both.
like
I love both.
Main one, Elseworlds, Lego. I like a bit of everything.
Yeah, because there's kernels of truth about what the character is, and you can see that in different interpretations. The Nolan trilogy, the last one was kind of rough. But the first two, I really
was
enjoyed.
a rough journey in the cinema for that movie.
Yeah, I don't know where
it's like that underground chiropractor. I'm not going to see.
Yeah, never
just
again.
Bang, punch your back in.
But the first two were great.
I thought they were good films. Like whether they're good Batman films or not they're good films, which is what you need, and then put Batman on top of that.
Yes. And the idea of making a more real world grounded idea of this, vigilante who has resources because he does have the wealth. It's like, what would he do? How would he do it? And could he do it? And it's like, well, yeah, for some of that it really worked. Even this most modern one with the Sparkle Vampire Kid. I can't.
Sparkle Robert Pattinson.
I was
so angry when they announced it was that I was like, this is going to be dog shit. And I've never been so happy to eat my own words and eat my own shoe when I saw that, because a friend wanted to see it and he dragged me along and I went, I'm not going to that. It'll be garbage. It was good.
I haven't seen any of his other work. And then people were like,
I have.
It's like, beyond, if you get past the Twilight stuff, you look at some of his other stuff,
he's in a good one with Robert Redford called The Lighthouse, and he was in something about elephants. I knew he'd grew as an actor in independent type movies, so I knew he was an okay actor. I just thought I don't want to see the Sparkle Vampire as Batman, but he proved us wrong.
But hey, people said the same thing about Mr. Mom, back in the day when his name just went right out of my head.
Michael Keaton.
When Michael Keaton was cast, everybody's like, what? The comedian? The goofy guy?
And the weird thing was there's no internet back then, so people are writing handwritten letters going, dear editor, why is Mr. Mom going to be Batman?
Yeah, and he proved everybody wrong. He did a great Bruce Wayne.
Well, that comes up every time they cast a Batman now. They're like, by the way, did you know that this happened?
Right. It's like, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah. And it's a good example because we shouldn't judge it, but we We'll do.
Well, yeah, and it's the same thing with Doctor Who. Every time there's
Yeah.
a new regeneration, it's like, oh, it's gonna suck. It's never gonna be as good as the last one. And then after a
Well, when
couple
I
episodes,
when I
it's
saw it
like,
was
yeah, he's
Capaldi,
okay.
I didn't know until after the fact, and I'm like, I've watched him in the thick of it and all that, and I was like, oh great, he's just angry bastard. He'll be great. Someone watched it
Yeah.
and I enjoyed it.
What was that British drama he was in where he curses like a sailor? He's
Yeah,
just
in the thick of
oh,
it.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd seen bits and pieces of that on BritBox, and it's like,
I love it. I've
yeah,
got the DVD somewhere. I've got to dig it out and watch it again.
oh,
Because
good
there's him,
stuff.
him and another Scottish guy that go back and forth, just tormenting each other with the most horrendous language I've ever heard.
Oh yeah. And his doctor, I liked. Some people are like,
Mm.
It's like, you know what? Capaldi could have been one of the best doctors. Again, some of the writing, he just didn't have
Yeah,
great storylines.
I just
And
think he's an excellent actor. Like I'll watch him in
yeah,
whatever.
I like the fact that he kind of, in my opinion, there was a lot of the third Doctor. You know, a lot of Pertwee in his
Yeah. I
mannerism.
go in the costuming and his
Yeah,
hair and his mannerisms, where he's very abrupt.
right. I mean, he wasn't afraid to just be blunt and
Yeah,
rude to the point of absurdity. Sometimes, it just fit
and
the
and
character. Like,
and you have to remember he's an alien. He's not human, even though he regenerates. And he hangs. He is an alien, so it makes sense he could be like that.
right, he's got different sensibilities.
Yeah.
Even with Eccleston, they played with that. It's like, why do you look human? It's like, no, you look Time Lord.
Mhm.
You stupid apes. I keep saving you
Yeah.
people, and well, this isn't thanks I get.
I
But
like seeing the master in that season. I forget who the lady was, but I knew the first time that lady showed up, and I went, "That's the master." I knew it. That
you
first bit,
knew
I
it.
went,
Yeah.
"Yeah." Just the mannerism and
Delicious.
the way they dressed her, I went, "That's definitely the master."
A delicious version of the master because
Mm.
playing with the whole idea of I've known the Doctor forever. I know him better than anybody. I'm his
Mm.
biggest fan. I'm also his biggest villain. And if you don't believe me, I will disintegrate you. She did a great job. I mean,
Yeah, it was
there's
excellent.
been some great masters in the past. That was an interesting twist that worked.
Mhm.
And her with the Capaldi era, that was a great mix. I love those
And,
two
and
together.
and there was an episode, I can't remember if it's the Capaldi one or one of the other ones, where one of the companions gets turned into a Cyberman. Oh, that was horrific.
Oh
That was
yes,
real like Cronenberg body horror stuff, man. They were showing you
that
what
was
happens in the factory, and
yeah.
you thought, oh, the doctor's going to save them. No,
No, that was a
no.
good idea. The way it was done, and the
Yeah.
redemption of that character.
And
They kind of almost did that with Clara, but then they
mhm.
chickened out. It's like they gave her a
Yeah,
great death, and then they tried to wince out of it. It's
yeah.
like,
Then they kind of brought it back for the
yeah,
Christmas special and just left it in the air. I'm like, is she
uh,
still a phantom? What?
yeah. That was a goofy one. That was
Is she
not
up in the
good.
Phantom Zone projector now? Because where else is she going to be?
Yeah, she's like between 1 minute and the next, whatever.
Mm,
So there's so many plot threads that could have, would have, should have.
mhm. Yeah.
Another great one from the Tennant era, The Doctor's Daughter.
Mhm,
Great episode, great idea. Now there is a literal daughter of the Time Lord from a mishap, and
mhm.
she's part Time Lord. She's something else. She's interesting. They could have done a whole spin-off series with her, but
Yeah.
no, she's
No,
out there
instead they
somewhere.
did that Torchwood or whatever it was.
Yeah, some of Torchwood was interesting. Some of it was a train wreck. I liked
Mm.
the,
I didn't know the
Jack.
characters are all right, but it just felt
Yeah,
like they didn't really develop it properly.
I don't know if they just didn't have the budget or they didn't have the good writing,
Uh,
but it's like,
I'm not
it was an
against the
interesting
spin-off when it
concept.
goes right.
Yeah, some of it was good. When they got to like, was it Children of Earth or Children of Men or whatever? I can't remember the name, but like that last season, it was,
Yeah,
eh, yeah, they were phoning it in a bit. Not the actors, but the writers.
yeah.
So, um, yeah, man, we're all over the board with this stuff. But
Yeah.
we hit on the same kind of things that we find. It comes back to the writing. If there's good
Mhm.
writing, I'm going to be interested, and especially
Yep.
if you have a classic character. And I can
I can
see,
watch bad movies if they've got interesting visuals, but I might just turn the sound off while I'm looking at comics on a tablet or something.
yeah,
But I need
there's
good
plenty.
writing to hook me in, like an HBO The Wire or Oz or Deadwood or something that's got real characters in it.
Yeah, something that makes me want to, compels me to either binge watch or
Mhm.
what's the next
Yeah,
episode?
I
Do I
just
care about
watched
these characters?
watched this week Godless. It's like a western, and they had Jeff, not Jeff, but Jeff Daniels, yeah,
Ooh, I haven't
set
heard
back in the
about it.
1800s. It's
I'll
only
check
like
it out.
one season, but it's 9 episodes of an hour each, and it's just I watched it over 2 nights. It's excellent.
I'll check that out. I love Deadwood. I liked Hell on Wheels too. That was another good one.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
was
know.
so annoyed that they didn't do another season of that to kind of round off the story, and it just trailed off the whole thing
Yeah,
with the crazy Dutch guy, whatever he was, and then the Anson, and that they were sitting. They kind of like had a real good peak, and then it plateaued, and then it kind of just they didn't quite finish it off very well. It was,
right. And that's another sad thing about a continued story. If they don't get
mm,
picked up for another season,
yeah,
or if for some reason something changes in the formula and it's like it
yeah.
didn't get the ending they really
That's
needed.
that's the one. Excuse me. That's the one thing I like about the old HBO stuff is they commit to an actual story arc, beginning, middle, and end. And some of the other networks they just go, "Oh, what's the ratings? Can that buy?"
Right. It's like give me the three acts. Give me a beginning, a middle, and end.
That's
Do a
actually
story.
that's one of the reasons I've been reading more Japanese manga and anime stuff in the last couple of years because a lot of the stuff hasn't beginning, middle, and end. You can go, I can pick it up, read it, finish, read something else.
Yeah,
It doesn't
and
just
a
go
lot
on
of
forever.
people. Yeah, it's like a lot of people were upset with the end of Berserk, but it's like
Hmm.
it needed to end, obviously
Hmm.
because of the death of the major contributor to the storyline. But it needed an ending. It needed a
Hmm.
justified place to
Yeah,
stop.
and a lot of those like Shonen Jump, comics for men and boys, and men who act like boys, and boys who want to be men, whatever. The male comics. A lot of
Yeah,
those run for a long amount of years, but eventually they end, and and they have an end to them, or they have different arcs, and sometimes they have a proper end, but then a sequel, so you don't have to read the sequel if you don't want to.
right. But I do like the fact, like you say, the stories have an ending, and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay, it's done. It was great. I loved it. I can always go back and revisit it,
Hmm.
but this story is done. Cowboy Bebop was one of those.
Hmm.
It had an ending, and there were some tragic elements to it, but it was done. And then they tried to keep bringing other
Hmm.
stuff into it, like the Cowboy Bebop movie, but then they put it somewhere in the continuity. It's like, no, no, no,
Hmm.
no. Just we have the original series. Leave it alone. It's fine. It's a
Hmm.
great story. Quit tinkering with it. So
I'm so glad I watched Go Lion this year because I've had three false starts in watching it where I had it like, because they're digital files and watching on a tablet. I couldn't get them on my TV at first. So the subtitles they were all not quite right. I couldn't read them. I had to find some
uh,
different subtitles. And the third version, over a year later, I had to start rewatching it 3 times. Finally, I found one that had good subtitles. I was actually able to watch it on the TV, watched it all through in a couple of weeks, and the story was excellent. And like, it drags a bit towards the later half, as most 52 episode Monster of the Week
yeah,
ones do, because they've got to keep it going for the advertising and the toys. But the ending is satisfying. It's heartbreaking and tragic and comedic and beautiful, all those things you want, and a good
yeah.
story.
I really love good storytelling,
And
and
and the real surprise thing in a show that starts off with like self-enforced slave labor and cannibalism and conquering the galaxy, the mice become major characters in the last third of the show, and they get their own, spoiler alert if you've never watched Go Live, they get their own little mecha robot with mice, and they actually help save several key characters towards the end of the show, and it's
that's
it's
awesome.
hilarious. And it
Yeah,
really lightens up the end of it because it gets so dark in that show, and then there's some comedy with the mice stuff, and they get their own little mouse version of Voltron, which is genuinely cool. I'd love to buy a toy of it.
I bet in Japan there's probably one out there.
I'm sure
We'll
there is.
we'll have to ask Phil from Treasures for Trigger. He could
Yeah.
probably tell us.
Phil, how many mouse toys have you seen this week? And it's like, oh, 50? Just 50,
Yeah,
mate.
it's
That's
like
all I've
they've got
seen this
whole
week.
shopping malls full of just
Do you
toys that
want
are
mouse
from.
mecha or mouse zombies or Mickey Mouse?
They do come up with some cool stuff, man.
uh,
Sometimes it gets lost in translation when it comes to the Western market, but it's cool when they get it right.
yeah.
But man, we're at the hour 45 mark on our,
Yeah,
show
you've got
here.
to cut it off sometime, man, because I'll sit here for 12 hours talking
Yeah,
rubbish.
we could both go, for days and days. So,
Hmm.
Johnny and I will be doing a BCs and Baddies on some of
Yeah,
the Batman villains, specifically the monster villains of Batman,
yeah, the monster
sometime in
villains
the
for
near
this
future.
guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I'm looking forward to that because obviously, we're gonna have some fun times with that. This has been fun, just hanging out and just goofing,
Yeah,
man.
right.
This is kind of what I invented the lounge for, was just get together with interesting guys who just want to talk about some cool stuff in these different pop culture eras and genres. I know there's some guys out there who are gonna watch this and go, yeah,
Hmm.
I'm digging it, man. I'm
I know
picking up
more
what you're
about
putting
Lego
down.
than I did yesterday.
Yeah, Bjorn is surprising. I
Hmm.
had no idea how interesting all the stuff behind the minifigures is, and he's going to go deeper into that as well. He's going to start
Oh,
looking
he
into
will.
history.
There's no stopping him.
Oh yeah.
You've
So,
unleashed the tiger.
hey, it's fun when somebody gets a passion for something, and you get to
Yeah.
see that ignited, and they go, "It's like, go, man, do your thing. I'm cool.
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with." So I'm gonna cut the recording here, and I need more coffee. But Johnny, has been great hanging with you, and I'm going to play us out here, and I will see you in the near future. And everybody home, thanks for hanging out in the lounge.